Hi there, I'm Carlina. 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and my parents told me, we're done being parents. While I was in surgery, they were on vacation. While I was recovering, my brother stole from my chemo fund. And when I finally stood up for myself, they came back, not with love, but with demands. They sold my things, lied about me online, called my friend to blame her for my boundaries. Now they say they're sorry. But if walking away makes me heartless, what does leaving your daughter during cancer make you? I walked out of the oncology building with a folder clutched to my chest. Treatment plan, lab results, insurance paperwork, everything they give you when your life just split in two. The November air was biting, but it wasn't the kind of cold that made me shiver. It was the kind that settled in your bones and stayed there. I didn't cry, not in the car, not when the light turned green and the traffic crept forward. I just drove, quiet, focused on nothing but the road ahead. That evening, I sat across from my parents in their living room. Same beige carpet, same faint scent of lemon polish. I held the folder in my lap, trying to find the words. I have breast cancer, I said finally, the words dry and factual, like reading off a grocery list. My mother blinked once, twice. Then she straightened her back, folded her hands and said, "Let's not tell anyone just yet. No need to make the family nervous." I thought I misheard her. "I'm not announcing it on TV, I said. "I'm telling you because you're my parents." Victor didn't even look up. He turned a page in the sports section like I'd just told him I was switching toothpaste brands. "You're strong, Carlina," Mom added. "You don't need attention. We raised you to handle things, not make a fuss." It wasn't yelling. It wasn't cruel. But something in me cracked all the same. Not loud, just final. On the drive home, I didn't put on music. I didn't call anyone. I just stared out the windshield. The glow of traffic lights painting everything in red and green and nothing. At home, I pulled out a blank notebook and wrote the first entry with a shaking hand. Diagnosis, stage 2B. Reaction, minimized. Verdict, you're on your own. I closed the book and stared at it for a long time. That night, I didn't call my friends. I didn't text my coworkers. I let the silence stretch. If my parents had already decided what this story would be, maybe it was time I started writing my own version. 2 weeks passed. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need their pity, and after what my parents said, I wasn't sure I'd believe any concern was real. But the bills started arriving, stacked envelopes with bold print warnings and medical codes I couldn't even pronounce. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen counter, my laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I logged into my bank account, ready to move funds from the small savings account I'd set aside for treatment. It wasn't much, just over $3,000. I had hoped it would cover the gap before my insurance kicked in. The balance showed $612. I stared at the screen, refreshed it. Twice. Then I clicked into the transaction history. 4 withdrawals, 2 listed as online game stores, 1 as a ride-share charge over $200, and another, larger one, a retreat deposit. Some kind of recovery getaway center in Vermont. I checked the account holder info linked to the purchases. Lyle White, my brother. I didn't even think. I called him right then. "Yeah?" His voice was half asleep. "You took over $2,000 from my treatment fund." There was a long pause, then lazily, "Look, I was going through stuff, stress. I didn't think you'd miss it." "You didn't think I'd—" My mouth went dry. "It was a medical account, Lyle. I'm starting chemo next week." "You've got insurance. You work full-time, I don't. And Mom said you'd understand. You're always the one who handles things." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I just said, very clearly, "You stole from your sister's chemo fund, and you're justifying it with stress. You don't get it. You've always been the favorite." I hung up. Later that night, I told my mother. Her response was a sigh that sounded rehearsed. "He's just having a rough time. Can't you try to be the bigger person here?" Victor didn't even speak. He was probably still hiding behind his crossword puzzles like he always did. I didn't bother responding. I ended the call, walked to the drawer where I kept that notebook, and sat down. November 12th. Amount withdrawn, $2,430. Explanation, stress family response excused. My response noted, not forgiven. Then I wrote one more line, slowly underlined 3 times. Being strong doesn't mean being disposable. The ink on that page had barely dried when my phone buzzed. It was Dr. Kent's office, my oncologist. "We can't wait," the nurse said. "Your imaging came back. We need you in Friday morning for surgery. Full mastectomy." My heart didn't race. It didn't even thump. It just paused, like it needed a second to understand. I thanked her, hung up, and texted my parents. Group chat, no dramatic announcement, just surgery scheduled for Friday morning, St. Charles Medical, check-in at 6:45 a.m. No reply from my mom. Lyle read it, then left it on seen. Thursday night, I laid out my hospital bag on the couch. It wasn't a lot, just sweatpants, my charger, chapstick. I stared at the zipper for a long time before finally closing it. The next morning, the city was still half asleep when I checked in. The surgical wing smelled like antiseptic and old carpet. A nurse walked me to pre-op and gestured toward a line of empty chairs. "Anyone here with you?" she asked kindly. I shook my head. Not yet. But I knew. They weren't coming. I pulled out my phone and texted Leora. I hadn't planned to, but something about those empty chairs made it impossible not to. She didn't ask questions. Just said, "Send me the hospital name. I'm on my way." Minutes later, I was in a gown under fluorescent lights, the IV dripping slowly beside me. When the nurse came back with a clipboard, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "We'll need someone to sign your release. Family?" I paused, then looked her in the eye. "Use Leora Morgan. She's on her way." An hour later, I was rolled toward the operating room. The last face I saw was hers, hair pulled up, hospital coffee in one hand, her signature already drying on the consent form. When I woke up, everything hurt. My chest felt like concrete, my throat like sandpaper. I blinked through the fog and saw her, still there, scrolling through her phone beside the bed. "You made it," I whispered. She smiled, soft. "You didn't think I'd let you go through this alone, did you?" "Did anyone else?" I couldn't finish the sentence. "No one even asked which hospital you were at," she said. That night, back in my room, under dim hospital light, I opened my notebook again. November 18th, emergency surgery. Present, one friend from work. Absent, everyone who shares my blood. I added a final line in bold strokes. Family isn't who shows up in your baby pictures. It's who shows up when you're cut open and scared. The stitches were still tender when I opened my laptop the next week, mostly to check my insurance portal. But a notification popped up. Darlene White posted a new status. Against my better judgment, I clicked. Some people forget who stood by them their whole life. Sad what money and attention can do to family. I didn't even need to read the comments, but I did. Cousin Marlene wrote, "You're such a strong mom, she'll come around." A neighbor chimed in, "Kids these days, no sense of loyalty." I didn't cry. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot, saved it in a folder I had just renamed Documentation, and opened my notebook. An hour later, my phone lit up with a call from Dad. "Carlina, hey, listen, your grandparents aren't doing well. Your mother and I need rest too. Maybe it's time you come back and stay here for a while, just a few months." I paused, let the words sink in, then answered, "I'm still healing from surgery. I can't lift anything heavier than a coffee mug." "That's why you're not working, right? I mean, you're home all day." My blood pressure rose. I gripped the edge of the counter, taking one steadying breath. "If someone needs care, maybe start with Lyle. He's not sick. He's not recovering. And he's already living there." Victor's tone shifted, tight, sharp. "Don't speak about your brother like that. He's had a tough year." "And what about my year?" I asked. "I lost a part of my body and nobody showed up, not even a voicemail. But now you want my body to show up for caregiving?" Silence. "Don't speak to me like I'm your backup plan." I hung up. That evening, I didn't open my work laptop. I didn't answer texts. I took a red pen to a fresh notebook page and wrote only one sentence. Slow, all caps. Blood is not a contract. It was early afternoon when my phone lit up with a message from Leora. I was halfway through a reheated bowl of soup, trying to stretch enough energy to sit upright on the couch. "Your mom just called my office." I froze. My stomach turned. I called her instantly. "What did she say?" "She said I'm making you think you don't need your family. that I'm poisoning you against them. Her voice was steady, but underneath I heard the restraint, the fury she was holding back for my sake. I didn't hesitate. I dialed Darlene's number. You don't get to harass the only person who's been there for me, I said the second she picked up. Her tone was cold, familiar. She's inflating your ego. You used to be humble, Carlina. No, I said calmly. I used to be scared. You liked me that way. Silence on her end, but not for long. You think you're better than us now, don't you? Just because you've got a paycheck and someone signing hospital forms? Better than people who left me to face cancer alone? Yeah, I might be. Darlene inhaled sharply. Then, like it was nothing, she dropped the line I think she'd rehearsed. Then maybe we're done being parents. I waited a beat. Let the weight of that sentence settle like dust on a coffin lid. Then I answered, maybe you never were. I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I didn't cry, I just ended the call. Not blocked, not silenced, just done. That night, I sat in bed under a quilt Leora had brought over from her mom's house. The stitches beneath my shirt still tugged when I moved too fast. But I felt something settle, a clean break. I opened my notebook. In block letters I wrote, no funeral, no obituary, but the death of a daughter who finally let go. The next morning, I opened the blinds and let light pour across the living room floor. For once, I didn't sit with a cup of tea or sink into the couch to numb the day away. I grabbed 3 empty boxes, rolled up my sleeves, and decided to start decluttering. Anything I could throw away to reclaim some space in this place, in my life. One drawer held old bills, another, Christmas cards from years when people still signed their names. Then I pulled out a manila envelope labeled in bold marker, Important Family Only. Inside, nestled among old tax forms and church bulletins, was a folded piece of stationery in my mother's handwriting. No envelope, no stamp, just a letter that was never meant for my eyes. I read it. Carlina is the stable one. She'll never leave us. If Lyle struggles, we have her. She's not exceptional, but she's dependable, the safety net. Not even the strong one, not the kind one, just the backup plan. I sank to the floor, the paper still in my hands, my chest tightening, not from the stitches, from the sentence that rewrote everything I had tried to believe. The next wave hit before I could brace for it. I noticed my laptop bag was lighter than usual. I opened it. Empty. My college bracelet, the one with the charm I had worn through job interviews and chemo consults, was also missing from the jewelry dish. I called the pawn shop down on Tremont, the one that never asked too many questions. The woman checked her vendor log. Yep, MacBook, charm bracelet, came in last Thursday, name listed, Victor White, said it was for medical emergency funds. I didn't need to ask whose emergency, I already knew. Lyle. I sat in silence for a while. No screaming, no phone calls, no dramatic demands, just a match. I took the letter, struck the flame, and watched it curl inside the kitchen sink, edges blackening, the ink bleeding out like poison. I was never your safety net, I whispered, staring into the ashes. I was the one you let fall first. 4 years can change a lot. Your body heals, your job title shifts, your friends become family. But some knocks still hit like they used to. It was a Saturday morning. I'd just finished wiping down the kitchen counter when there it was, a knock at the door. I opened it and froze. There they stood. Darlene, eyes red like she'd been rehearsing her pain for hours. Victor held a Bible like it might give him credibility. Lyle just looked tired, like life finally caught up to him. We've lost the house, Darlene began, voice thin. Victor stepped forward, eyes avoiding mine. We were wrong, Carlina, about everything. I need help, Lyle muttered. Sis, please. I didn't say a word. I didn't invite them in. I didn't move. I closed the door. By that evening, Darlene had taken it to Facebook. We begged for forgiveness. She shut us out. So sad what pride does to family. The comment section lit up with support, for her. Cousins, church friends, even her old co-workers chimed in. You're such a good mom. She's been through so much. Kids these days forget their roots. I didn't respond, but others did. Elisa, my cousin, commented first. Carlina was in surgery. You were in Florida. Let's not rewrite history. Then Leora. I signed her surgical release because nobody else showed up. Nadine added receipts, literal screenshots of texts, bank transfers, silence. Suddenly, the post vanished, deleted. But not before it was screen captured, saved, shared. Later that night, I opened the family group chat, the one I hadn't touched in years. I typed, "You didn't lose a daughter, you lost access. I didn't leave, I was removed, and I won't be returning." Then I exited the group. By Wednesday, I thought the storm had passed. The passive-aggressive comments had died down. The silence from the family chat felt like a strange kind of peace. No new vague posts, no middle-of-the-night calls. I had started to let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, they had finally moved on, or at least backed off. I was wrong. At exactly 7:04 a.m., my phone lit up like a warning siren. 14 missed calls, every number unsaved, but instantly recognizable. You don't forget the numbers of people who only reach out when drama is brewing. The kind of calls that aren't about checking in, they're about pulling you back into the fire. A message came in from my cousin, Elisa. Just a screenshot and a link. No words. She didn't have to say anything. The image said enough. There it was. Darlene's new post on Facebook. A filtered photo of our family from some years ago barbecue. The kind of event where everyone plays nice in public and bleeds in private. I was smiling in the picture. Wide, open, convincing. But that smile was the biggest lie I ever told. And then the caption. A daughter's silence can break a parent's heart. We loved her, we still do. But sometimes, pride builds higher walls than forgiveness. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to feel the full weight of the hypocrisy. She knew what she was doing. This wasn't a plea for healing, it was a performance, one designed to shift blame and frame a narrative where I was the cold, ungrateful one who turned away for no reason. This time I didn't cry. I didn't respond in anger or try to call and explain myself again. I'd done that before. It never changed anything. They didn't want truth. They wanted control. So I did something different. By noon, I had an email drafted. There was no venom in it. No insults, just truth. Cold, clear, documented. Subject line, "Since we're talking family, I attach the evidence." Every file, every screenshot, every document that told the story they kept trying to erase. Bank statements showing Lyle's unauthorized withdrawals from the joint account while I was sedated. Screenshots of my messages, unanswered, when I first told them about my diagnosis. Photographs of hospital bracelets, dated and time-stamped. The surgical release form, signed by Leora, who insisted on acting as guardian without telling me. Messages from Darlene, explicitly telling me not to embarrass the family by making my illness public. Then I sent it, to every family member whose email I still had. I didn't wait for their replies. I didn't want to read their defenses, their guilt-tripping, their "but you know how she gets" excuses. I muted the thread and went on with my day. By evening, Elisa messaged again. "They're imploding. Darlene deactivated Facebook. Lyle's being roasted in a group chat. Victor, nothing." Of course, Victor stayed silent. That was his legacy, watching everything unfold, always above the fray, never stepping in unless it cost him nothing. But I didn't feel vindicated. There was no surge of victory, no satisfaction in their chaos, just a quiet space inside me where rage used to live. And in that space, something else had started to grow. Resolve. I logged into my legal portal. One by one, I made the changes that mattered. Removed them all as emergency contacts. Filed the paperwork for a legal name change. Uploaded the notarized documents to make it real. And finally, I wrote one last email. No attachments, no explanations, just one line, the only one left to say, "This isn't revenge, it's recovery. I'm done playing roles you wrote for me." Then I logged out, for good. The customs line moved slowly, but I didn't mind. I had nowhere to rush to, and for the first time in years, no one to answer to. My entire life fit into one carry-on and one fresh passport with a name only I chose. Lisbon welcomed me with crisp air and a sun that didn't feel performative. I checked into the small hotel, key in hand, no one waiting behind a curtain to tell me what I owed them. I dropped my bag, stepped out onto the balcony, and watched waves roll in like clean slates. The breakfast tray had figs, goat cheese, and something I couldn't pronounce. I didn't take a picture. Not yet. First, I reached into my bag and pulled out the new journal. Page 1. Forgiveness is how I stopped hemorrhaging from wounds you kept reopening. I scrolled through the last decade of my photo album, paused at one with Darlene's arms looped around my shoulders. Delete. Then I snapped a new one. Plate, journal, ocean. Back in Boston, I knew things were shifting. Not dramatically, not loud, just the quiet unraveling of a staged life. Darlene's Facebook vanished. Victor resigned from his church board, citing health reasons. Lyle was couch surfing, waiting on a court date for the civil suit tied to his debt. I didn't feel proud. I felt outside of it all, as I should have been long ago. My phone buzzed, Leora checking in. You eat yet? Already did, I texted back. Outside, with sea air. Finally. Later that afternoon, I filed paperwork from the hotel Wi-Fi. Updated my will, listed Leora as next of kin, removed all prior emergency contacts, submitted the final draft of my name change confirmation. I opened the last page of the journal and wrote, I was never the ungrateful daughter. I was the one who finally remembered she belonged to herself. Then I closed the book. I used to think family was something you fought for at all costs. But sometimes, the real fight is learning when to stop bleeding for people who never brought bandages. If you've ever felt like the strong one, the dependable one, the one who always shows up, I want you to know, your worth isn't measured by how much you endure for others. It's measured by how deeply you honor yourself. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in deleting a photo, rewriting your last name, or waking up in a place where no one expects you to be anything but free. And now I want to ask you something. Have you ever walked away from someone who told you it was your duty to stay? Or maybe you've held on to pain in silence because speaking out felt like betrayal? Tell me in the comments, what did you learn about yourself when you finally let go? If this story touched something in you, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't speak to you, that's okay too. Let me know why. Your voice matters here. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, raw, real, and full of heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You never know. The next story might be the one that helps you heal. Until then, be loyal. Not to their version of you, but to your own becoming.